It is about the end of May, and this little study that we have done, Christ and Culture in the New Testament, is also just about done. I believe we've got a couple more weeks before I'll be out. I mean, we'll be here, but I've asked Rodney Ashlock to teach the week before the wedding, and the week of the wedding. And so for the summer, we'll do word studies. And James has written a couple more lessons for this series. And so we may extend it at least one more week, maybe two. He's got some kind of concluding things to say, and then he's written also another installment. So we may just extend this, and I might let Rodney do the first word study and introduce. I thought, well, maybe I'll introduce for a week kind of the concept of doing word studies. We'll see. It'll be fine. Today, we're in John. You may want to look at the Gospel of John. You may look at 1 John. So the way that James has approached this is to look at this concept in the different kinds of writings in the New Testament. First, we did Christ and Culture kind of in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, that is, the Synoptic Gospels. Christ and Culture in a couple places in Paul. Last week, Peter, 1 Peter. Today, John. I'm thinking, as I'm going through and kind of thinking, what do we do for the next couple weeks? One thought that I've not quite settled on yet is to kind of extend this look at John's writings and look at Revelation. The 7 letters in Revelation 2 and 3. Christ and Culture shows up there. I know Revelation may be a lot to bite off, even in a small bite, but the letters to the 7 churches, there's some Christ and Culture kind of comments there. So that is one extension of this way of looking at it, by looking at how the writers of the New Testament have approached this question. The question is, how do we deal with our culture? Again, to repeat, but hopefully not to belabor, my very simplistic, unscientific, untrained definition of culture is kind of the way we are, us here and now. Kind of what all that makes us here and now. So there's a sense of culture which is kind of reflects a group identity. It's us. There's a time facet to this, and there's a place. The way that we are here and now. Okay? Culture may or may not be good. It may or may not be healthy. So we're not really talking about what's good, right, or beautiful. We're just kind of talking about what is. And the way things are for us here and now. It's how we talk. It's how we organize our common life together. It trickles down into the laws that we agree to, what's in bounds and out of bounds, what's within the rules, what's outside the rules. What do we do to people who violate the rules or the norms? What is good, right, or beautiful? Without evaluating culture itself, but culture itself, people will grow into and decide for themselves what they admire, what they promote, what they consider to be beautiful, the kind of art, the kind of music, the kind of poetry, the stories that we tell about ourselves and our origins that give us meaning. We do this in our own lives. We do this in our families. We get together at family reunions, and it's the same stories that come up. And there's also stories we don't tell. I haven't really mentioned that too much, but again, my own limited, unscientific, unlearned, mostly ignorant understanding of, I don't know, I guess it's cultural anthropology. I don't even know that. Also includes the things we don't tell about how we got to where we are and who we are and why we are the way we are. I mean, there are family stories that we tell. Oh, we left Arkansas in the 19-teens. We came here, and then we came here, and then we eventually got here. In my case, we left, I think, Holland or possibly Germany in the 1680s or about 1700. And the first ice, so far as we know, we don't really know. We don't even know how old he was. We don't really know where he came from. We really don't know why he seems to have known 6 languages or 7. And how he got here, we don't know. Are you running towards something? Are you running from something? For all I know, he could have been a scoundrel and he's running away from something. We don't know that. And how he got here, and why did he not teach his children to read? His children were barely literate. He seems to have been very educated. But there's many more questions about things we don't know. There's also things that we don't tell. And there's probably, again, we can all nod at when we get together at the family reunion, there's just places that we have agreed for this to be a pleasant weekend, we're not going to start this. We're not going to bring up that. We're not going to start in on this area. In fact, if we tiptoe around this, it'll be a lot pleasant for everyone. Okay? So it's the things we suppress. It's the taboos. It's the things we'd rather forget. It's the stories we gloss over. It's the stories that we tell and retell and they become legendary. I'm just talking about human culture in general, the things that make us who we are. Well, in John, in the Gospel, and we'll look at a place in 1 John, the terminology isn't culture, and we mentioned that when we looked at Paul. Paul doesn't use this phrase, Christ and culture, but Paul will have some things to say about how we live in our place and in our time, given that in that place and time, it's just there are some ways about what's just what makes us who we are. That for Paul will challenge the gospel, that will compete with the gospel for our loyalties, that will negate the gospel if we'll let it. That would be very challenging for those of us who make the Christian confession to live within that setting. In John, it's the world, the cosmos. There's a Greek term that comes right into English, cosmos. We use that word a lot. The things that are. And so again, for the shorthand definition, it's going to basically be a functional equivalent to culture, the world. If you look through John's Gospel and you look through 1 John, that term shows up a lot. Now this is James counting, and I think he's talking just about the Gospel. Jesus will talk about the world. So again, all these chapters are not equal, but 21 chapters in the Gospel of John. Jesus will have this term on his lips 59 times, or on average, about 3 times per chapter, give or take. The narrator, John, will talk about it or use it another 12. And speakers, other characters in the story, as Jesus is going about his daily thing, there'll be people in the story that will mention that word 7. So as Jesus goes through John, he's talking about it. The people he's interacting with are talking about it. And the narrator is talking about everyone else as they talk about it. so the world. Okay, let's look at the first chapter of John's Gospel. The way that I'd like to approach this is we're in our own time and place, and our task is to embody our confession, Jesus Christ is Lord, in our time and place with humility and grace and love and honor and integrity and respect and courage. And we could keep adding words to that, okay, with uprightness and fidelity and clarity. And it's always a challenge because the way things are is always changing. So it means we've always got to be on our toes. Or you go to a different place, and I've talked about this too, when one leaves Tennessee and comes to Texas, as I've described it, those Texans have strange ways. They think about the world differently. So it's been challenging for me, as it would be challenging for anyone, to go to a different place and understand there's a different way of seeing the world. These people have different histories about what got them here. They have different ways about the food they eat and the language they use and the way they talk about themselves and how things are here. So just when you get comfortable, either you can move to a different place and things will change on you, or just stay in one place long enough and the world will change around you. So we're always on our toes. This is a perennial task of the church and has been since day one. So this is not a new thing. So the way that I approach this is, let's see how John, in this case today, John's Gospel, frames the question. Help us understand kind of the disposition we need to have towards the world. Well, let's understand how John tells us Jesus encountered the world, and think about what that will lead the church to do, how we can frame the question. In some ways, we can't always assume that how we engaged our culture in the past will be the right way to engage the culture in the present or the future. Nor can we assume that the ways that we've engaged in the past as always the tactics or the techniques or the strategies was just completely misguided and wrong-headed and therefore should be discarded because it requires something totally new today. Well, that's just the flip side of the same assumption. So let's look at what John says about this, and that I think will give us a frame to put this question in. I think it will also suggest some, at least at a kind of a top-down level, a way of strategizing of how we interface with our world to respect the integrity of our Christian confession. Okay, that's a lot of intro. But, John 1. Look at this first paragraph. In our Pew Bible, it's the first 18 verses, what our Pew Bible will call the prologue. Okay? This is the narrator framing the question, framing the story, framing the retelling of the Jesus story, framing the instruction. If we think for just a minute, this document was written for a purpose. It looks like, based on some things that we see later in John, lots of things could have been written. You remember all the books could have been written? Remember that line from John, the end of the gospel? Okay. We could write a lot more, but we're not writing everything because our task is not to chronicle everything. Our task is to write something sufficient for you to believe. Okay. I'm paraphrasing a couple passages in John 20 and 21. where John tells us why he writes what he writes. Okay, if you want to chase those references down, it's John 20, 30, 31, and John 21, 25. Okay. 10-year-old me, as a kid, reading John 20 and 21, I always wondered, I wonder what they left out. Okay? And that's not unique, because Christians for a long time have wondered, I wonder what they left out. I only raised a question to say, I get it, but don't be preoccupied with it, because what's written was written for us and is sufficient for us to believe. That's the purpose behind the gospel. Okay? John 20, 30 and 31, John 21, 25. He did many things. And a 10-year-old kid's curiosity is one thing, okay, but this is not written to satisfy our curiosity. This is written so that we may believe. Okay. Now, is this written for people who do not believe, to bring them to faith? Or is this written for people who do believe, to strengthen their faith? Yes. Okay? Seems like yes. Those who believe need to stay faithful, stay believing. Those who do not have faith, we hope that they will come to faith. Okay? And believing have life in his name. That's the purpose of the gospel. Okay? So, in John 1, John frames the whole story. And we have an insight that I think will help us with our disposition of how God sees the world and what happens. Okay. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. All things were created through him, and apart from him, not one thing was created that has been created. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. That light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overtaken it. Or our Pew Bible says, did not overcome it. That is the story. God has created all that is. Apart from him, not one thing exists that has come into existence. Not one thing. The frame of everything is God's creative work. And it is a light in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Okay? Not to be flippant, but everything else is just details. Okay, we'll talk about some other things, but here's the upshot. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God, and not one thing exists apart from his creative work, and it is light in the darkness, and the darkness, though it will try, has not overtaken it. There was a man sent from God named John. He came as a witness to testify to the light. Now, he's not the light, but he testifies to the light. Okay. Verse 10, he was in the world, and the world, there's our term, cosmos. He was in the world, and the world was created through him, yet the world did not recognize him. That's the essential description of the Jesus story. He's in the world was created through him, the world did not recognize him. How can we understand the disposition of Jesus towards the world? Okay, John 1:10 is as good a summary as we can find. He was in the world, he created the world did not recognize him. Not just let me help put a face with a name. Not that kind of recognition. It's the world does not, in a sense, it's Jesus passes by and they don't notice him. Yes, in that sense. But there's a sense of the world does not recognize Jesus as the one who created it. In other words, the world chooses, we would say in a cultural sense, chooses an alternative story to the fact that it is created and exists by the work of God in Jesus Christ. The world shuns its creator. Okay, so before we ever get to the narratives about Jesus, John puts it in a frame, and the frame is, he is in the world, he created the world rejects him. Okay? He came to his own, and his own people did not receive him. But to those who did, he gave them the right to be children of God, to those who believe in his name, who are born not of natural descent, the will of the flesh, or the will of man, but of God. To those who believe, it is a new birth. And it is unlike any birth that we've ever seen. It's not a birth based on will, that is the human will to create a child. This is not a birth that you can trace in genealogical sense or national or ethnic or racial sense. Natural descent, will of the flesh. This is the work of God, this new birth. Speaking of the flesh, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. This is John talking about Jesus. We observed his glory. The glory is the one and only Son from the Father, full of grace and truth. Now, John testified about this. He said, the one coming after me is ahead of me. He existed before me. This is the one John talked about. Indeed, we have received grace upon grace from his fullness. This is John putting the whole story in a frame. The frame is, he became flesh and we saw him. And what happened is we've received grace and truth. Grace upon grace. The law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The one and only Son, who is himself God and is at the Father's side, he has revealed him. Thus the prologue to John's Gospel. So this whole question of how we relate to the cosmos as ones who confess belief and faith in Jesus the Christ, all of that begins with God's disposition towards the cosmos, which is what? He created it. We'll see in a minute. He dearly loves it. He has come to it, and it has rejected him. Okay? He becomes flesh and dwelt among us. And we have received grace upon grace. That's what we've received. So our basic disposition starts from what God has done in Jesus, which is he has come to the world and he has taken on flesh, flesh just like our flesh. He has taken on our flesh. He has taken on the human flesh. And though we cannot see God, Jesus Christ has revealed God to us. Now let us tell you about it. Okay? And thus the rest of the Gospel of John. Okay? Well, so first thing about the world is it's created through God's work. And let's turn a page to John 3, very famous passage. You know this. This is John and Nicodemus. I'm getting to John 3:16. So that John can explain something about Jesus, the story of Jesus and his disposition towards the world, which I think will help frame our understanding of how we relate to our culture or the way things are for us here and now. Okay? Well, let's just jump in the middle of the paragraph without any setup. Okay? I don't have time for a setup. We hardly have time to just get into this. But verse 14, in the midst of the conversation with Nicodemus, Jesus says, just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, Again, there's a story there in Exodus we don't have time to get into, or Numbers. Okay. Just as Moses lifted up the snake, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him, there's our purpose for the writing of the gospel from John 20 and 21, by the way. Okay. These are written so that you may believe. Jesus says, just as the serpent was lifted up, so the Son of Man must be lifted up, so that those who see him lifted up will believe and have eternal life. For God loved the world in this way. He gave his one and only Son, so that everyone who believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. God did not send his Son into the world, there's our term, cosmos, to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Anyone who believes in him is not condemned, but anyone who does not believe is already condemned, because he has not believed in the name of the one and only Son of God. This is the judgment. The light has come into the world. That's the same language from John 1. The light has come into the world. And people loved darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. This is a helpful diagnostic. Help us understand the way things are for us here and now. Okay, the short version is we love the darkness because our deeds are evil. From John 1, he is a light shining in the darkness, and the darkness has not overtaken it. So we already know from John 1 that though we may look around and see that because our deeds are evil and we prefer the darkness over the light, we do not need to be bewitched by that and led to believe that somehow because we or the culture or the world around us loves the darkness over the light, that somehow that diminishes the light. Okay? That's a helpful reminder and kind of trailer behind the diagnostic. The diagnostic is they reject the light because they love the darkness. Okay? That helps me understand the way things are. Don't forget, the darkness has not overcome the light. Okay? John has already framed everything. He has come to the world, he is a light shining in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Now, the world loves the darkness. Okay? That helps us understand how things are and the way they are and why they are the way they are. The short version is people love darkness. Okay? Why? Because their deeds are evil. To kind of stay within the metaphor, they'd rather hide in the shadows than live in the light. Okay? This is the judgment. The light has come into the world. People love darkness rather than the light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and avoids it, so that his deeds may not be exposed. Okay? But anyone who lives by the truth comes to the light, so that his works may be shown to be accomplished by God. The question for Nicodemus is, will I make the confession that Jesus is the Christ, the Messiah of God? Will I believe in the one who's lifted up? That's the question for all those of us who come after him, who read this gospel. When he is lifted up, and I look at him lifted up, do I believe or do I not? Do I entrust myself to the light or do I hide in the darkness? That's the question. So it puts you in the position of you need to make your choice. Okay? Now, what's behind his being lifted up? There's our very famous John 3:16. Why is he lifted up? He is lifted up because this defines the love of God for the world. Now, his lifted up is clearly crucifixion. This is not a vague, he's lifted up, he's great. Okay, no, he is hoisted up on a cross. The kind of love is to suffer to the uttermost from the ones you came to redeem. The character of the gospel is that God in Christ has suffered to the uttermost from the very hands of those whom he loves, the worst kind of treatment that you could imagine. That's the gospel. The gospel is not a vague, oh, he's great and you could be great too. It is, he has suffered for you because he loves you. In what way does he love us? He loves us in this way. He gave his one and only Son, that those who believe in him would not perish, but have eternal life. That's the frame of the gospel and the disposition of God to the world. And that is also ours. What's your basic disposition to the world? Love and sacrifice. How will we relate to the way things are here and now for us? Well, in some way, I don't know. We're going to have to figure it out together because, and as soon as we do today, it could very well change tomorrow, and the landscape that we're going to have to relate to will shift on us, and we will have to stay on our toes. But no matter how we implement it, the basic thrust is a kind of love that mirrors what Jesus did on the cross. A kind of love that shines light into dark places, that should be expected to be opposed. Why? Because people love darkness rather than light. So we should not give up our hope because, remember from John 1, the darkness has not overcome the light. And if the darkness has not overcome his light, the darkness will not overtake ours. Okay. Look at John 15. There's another interaction in the Gospel of John. Okay. It uses our term world, and this is Jesus talking to his disciples, and it helps us understand, helps us put a frame around how we relate to our world. This is also helpful for those who would read the gospel or hear it taught. By the gospel, I mean the document we call John. For those who would read it and try to kind of count the cost of this faith. Full disclosure, understand what we're up against. Read the fine print, okay? Read everything before you sign the dotted line. What other image could we use? Okay, you need to be informed. Okay, John 15, look at verse 18. Again, we'll just jump right in. There's water under the bridge about interactions that Jesus has had. We just went from chapter 3 to chapter 15. I realize, okay, drop it in the middle of the story. John 15, 18. If the world hates you, understand it hated me before it hated you. Okay, pause. In the setup, the last 3 or 4 weeks, 5 weeks maybe, I made a couple observations, very broad historical observations. One of them was the church was a fringe outsider minority for the first 250, 60, 75 years of its existence. It was illegal in the sense it was not the legally sanctioned expression of religion and myth-making and meaning-making that the culture of the Roman Empire had taken upon itself as the way to explain how we are the way we are. It was to the eyes of the authorities, a hostile competitor for the minds of the people. It was fringe, and as time goes on, it goes from kind of a sectarian fringe among the Jewish group, which we would tolerate if they'll keep to themselves, and it goes towards something that was actively persecuted. And the church from about the 300s to, I don't know, within our memory, was a total flip. It was accepted, not only accepted, but promoted by the powers that be. And the way things are for us here and now increasingly reflected Christian values until we wake up one day and realize this is not the world that we remember. Okay? So, what should be surprising for us is not we have waken up one day and we realize we're on the outside. How surprised are we? Actually, I think what should be surprising is we had a lot of cultural weight behind us for so long. Because it did not start that way. And if we're looking at John 1 and John 3, we're already understand that kind of our natural disposition towards the truth of the Christian gospel is, I do not want to hear it because it exposes the deeds I do that are evil. So we should not be surprised that if the world hates us, Jesus says it hated me before it hated you. We should be surprised if the world accepts us. We should be grateful that if the gospel gets a good hearing, but we shouldn't be surprised if the world hates. If you were of the world would love you as its own. However, because you are not of the world, I have chosen you out of it, the world hates you. Remember the word I spoke to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But they will do these things to you on account of my name, because they don't know the one who sent me. If I had not come and spoken to them, they would not be guilty of sin. Now they have no excuse for their sin. The one who hates me also hates my Father. If I had not done the works among them that no one else had done, they would not be guilty of sin. Now they have seen and hated both me and my Father. This happened so it would be fulfilled. They hated me for no reason. Okay, so Jesus to his disciples says, you should not be surprised. I think that helps us calibrate our expectations. Okay? Time to stop. There's more that could be said from John. We didn't even get to 1 John, did we? Okay, so we may well keep in the literature from John next week. We may look at 1 John. We may even go into Revelation perhaps next week or the week after.